It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung
by immigrants as they struck out to distant shores, pioneers who pushed westward against unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
It was the call and prosperity. Yes, we can to opportunity and prosperity.
Yes, we can heal this nation. Heal this nation.
Yes, we can repair this world.
Repair this world.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, this is a special episode, The Post Office 2018. We've done, I believe, 2 of these, perhaps 3. In the series, we know 2, and they've been well received. Several thousand people tuned into those productions. They're still in archive there. We had the activist actor Mr. Glover out of San Francisco in one. His mother worked for the post office, and I believe he did also as a teenager there in San Francisco. It's one of those institutions that was friendly to African Americans from the 50s, 60s on. Many people were in the post office, and they had a standard of living there through the postal unions, the unions that represent the postal workers. That was unparalleled in the community, and it was also basically on a par with many of the so-called manufacturing jobs, or what euphemistically was called factory work at the time. We talked on Numbers Man, that's our macroeconomics program, about the 70s and what was known at that time as the high-pressure economy. The idea there was to move people from lower level of employment and lower skilled to a better skilled jobs. So basically what happened there was you had people from agrarian societies, agrarian areas, I should say, not agrarian societies, move into manufacturing primarily. And you would see that in places like Michigan. People that lived out in the rural parts of Michigan would come into Flint and various other centers, into Detroit, etc., and work in the automobile industry. And the same thing happened in Ohio, Indiana, there. So what you had was people moving in. But the post office was one of those denominators that was there, and there were obviously many, many jobs within the post office, and also with the letter carriers union, people that actually deliver the mail to the millions of people. The old adage, rain, snow, sleet, would virtually never stop the postal service. And if you recall, in the history of the country, the Pony Express, they literally rode from town to town delivering letters into the far west, starting at the gateway at the time of St. Louis. But the letter carriers and various people within the post office deliver mail all over the continental U.S. They fly mail out in Alaska, in Hawaii. I'm not sure how they get it there. Perhaps some remote places on SERP boards. Get it right in a minute here. But they do get it there. I know a lady that was a carrier in Houston, one of the areas of Houston. They called her a rural carrier. Another classification, rural carriers, of course, deliver mail, stamps, etc., prescription drugs. And it's a very important situation. The Postal Service is more than just, quote-unquote, the first-class letter, which some still go out there. and other types of information, but they also deliver prescription drugs to people, and now ever increasingly they're embedded with Amazon and various other. They've always done a partial business, and we'll be talking about some numbers here after our little introduction. But it is more and more there, and the post office also is a corporation. Although it is government funded, is embedded with the U.S. government, and is a government post office. The right wingers have called many years. I remember the lady in one of my political science classes, that was probably been 1972, 71. Anyway, nonetheless, her father had tried to do a postal service to deliver flyers, what we call now junk mail, primarily. But he couldn't use the quote-unquote the mailboxes. They were at the time exclusively for mail delivered by the Postal Service. So it is a government postal service. In the UK, they've tried to privatize some of the posts, and it's a disaster. The post office, as they call it, can be seen as a public entity. I can recall talking to a supervisory type in the early 70s, and at that time, or the later 70s, the internet was on the horizon. They were thinking about being a place where people could come and view their email. That was obviously before emails took off, and by extension, perhaps they would have been offering domain service. And had they done this, that would have been a revenue generator for the post office. Now, Representative Senator Warren, the Commonwealth, has talked about letting the post office be a banking entity. In other words, they would be offering, they do offer money orders now, but that would be a place where people could deposit their checks, cash their checks, etc. And they'd offer a range of services. And I assume they would also offer debit cards. They would do all of that, and you could not only do it at the post office, but you could also do it online. The post office has that ability to do it. This was inspired by an article in The Nation, an old standard progressive magazine that's been around a very, very long time. It's by Jake Bittle on the 21st of February. If you look at this, the postal workers are shouldering the burden, for Amazon. In fact, there's a picture of a postal worker in the cold out there. The postal worker at our that served our office complex retired after 30 plus years because of Amazon packages. The way the postal service works is, after 30 years, the man still had split days off, and he would work Saturdays and sometimes Sundays. This was a carrier. Let me just read from the article. Every day, postal trucks drop off 4,000 packages at the U.S. Postal Service's station in central Tennessee, where they unload by a team of 6 USP, United States Postal Service workers. Each person grabs a box, rushes to the only scanning machine, runs the barcodes, and places in the proper gurneys for its route. The process takes about 10 seconds. It can be repeated as many as 200 times per hour. You all see of us is management, including trying to get onto the machines, scanning packages, then tossing them and trying to get them through. That is from Amanda. She is a clerk who works there. I'm pretty sure every one of us has at least one repetitive motion injury. These are people that work in the post office. Around 1/3 of the packages Amanda handles are shipped by none other than Amazon. We'll talk about Amazon more in later in the broadcast. As the Seattle-based tech giant owner of the Washington Post commands even a greater share of retail market. The number of packages handled by the USPS keeps increasing, but the workers say the Postal Service management hasn't responded to the surge in heavy items by investing in staffing or infrastructure. Instead, its leadership has cut costs and resorted to what the union leaders call management by stress. No doubt about that. All the quotas, and this is one of the big problems with government agencies, although this is a quasi-government agency, that they try to act like Trump Inc., the Trump organization, or Amazon itself. In other words, the same management techniques are there. And in the old days, you had supervisors, and now these people are called managers. They actually get bonuses in many of these agencies, including the post office, to force workers to perform even at faster rates of rapidity. We absolutely don't have the proper staffing for the amount of packages we get, Amanda said, who withheld her full name for fear of workplace repercussions. Everyone in the office is overwhelmed by it, but the only way management is going to respond is if we file an incident report. People are just so busy that they say it'll be fine tomorrow, and it's not. Amazon was able to make a deal with the to ship its packages via the Postal Service. It cut rate prices, and even old DJ Trump has complained about this for peanuts. I think that's what old DJ called it, because of the company's preemptively sorts and labels packages by postal route. But transporting and distributing of these packages still take clerks like Amanda much longer than sorting letters. They can be fed through machines, but if the clerks are delayed, the station carriers will be delayed in starting their routes, which are already longer than ever thanks to the partials that fill up their satchels and trucks. Many won't deliver their final box until well after the sun sets. There's a lot of Amazon. It's gumming up the works. Amanda said things are getting backed up 2 or 3 hours. For decades, Republicans have painted the Postal Service as a prime example of government inefficiency. Just last year, Darrell Issa, you remember old Darrell Issa, he's retired finally, made his millions of dollars in selling automobile alarms on TV. Is one of the most vicious critics, implying the agency could be nearing its end. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the third quarter, and you are down by 25 points. If Tom Brady doesn't come in, you're bankrupt, he said, referring to the quarterback of the Patriots, known for his comebacks and a alleged support of DJ Trump. But there's no reason for the post office to be struggling. It sustained itself through postal revenue, receiving no taxpayers' money, and was profitable through the early 2000s, even as email became ubiquitous, and the number of letters decreased. Hardly anyone writes letters anymore. In 2006, that would have been under the administration of G.W. Bush. A Republican-led Congress passed the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, a bill that set the post office pricing scheme for the next decade, 10 years, including almost a footnote in the legislation was an ambiguous requirement. The Postal Service would prepay. No other outfit organization does this. Decades of worker health care benefits over only 10 years at the rate of $5 billion a year. Some politicians voiced concern at the time of the size of the payments, but the Post's revenues were higher than ever, and the bill passed with quote-unquote bipartisan support. The post office ponied up the first few years, but then the Great depression came. The depression hit mail volume from large companies dropped off. The annual $5 billion obligation became too much, and the Postal Service stopped paying it. The results is from Steve Hutkins, and we'll go to his blog. He's a professor at NYU. It was a manufactured crisis. We've seen many manufactured crises from military crises. If you recall, remember, the Maine was one of those manufactured crises that fueled conservative arguments that the post office should be privatized. Republicans like ISA have used the inability to pay as an excuse. The argument they want to make all along, which is the government can't get anything right, and the Postal Service should therefore be hobbled or privatized. No other company or government agency has funding obligations like that, according to Hutkins, and he's correct about that. And the post office is, in fact, profitable. One big reason has remained solvent in the age of emails is through its growing demand for package delivery, mostly driven by online shopping revenue. Was just about the same in 2017 as it was in 2005, the revenue, according to the annual report, but packages now play a much larger role. In 2005, 1.1 billion packages made up roughly 3% of the agency's revenue. In 2017, the most recent year, 5.7 billion packages made up 28%, almost 30%. And in 2017 alone, packages volume grew by 589 million pieces, an increase attributable almost entirely to e-commerce. One reason the Postal my pointer is getting me here. Because of the Postal Service is guaranteed universal service. Its network, about 150 million addresses, is far more extensive than any private service like FedEx or UPS. Amazon takes advantage of this infrastructure and hires the post office to perform what it calls last mile delivery. Packages from Amazon's local fulfillment warehouse are interjected as Amazon describes it into the postal stations, taken out along with letters, which saves Amazon the most expensive part of the cross-country delivery. One estimates around 40% of Amazon's packages are handled by the post office, and getting larger, no doubt about that. This has a direct impact on workers in mailrooms and delivery trucks across the country. Union representatives and rank-and-file workers say the management has pursued a proper deal with Amazon without regard for conditions for clerks and the carriers, the two divisions of the Postal Service. We welcome the work from Amazon, but we want to make sure we can serve the public without too much stress and injury to the workers. That is from Mark Diamondstein, the president of the American Postal Workers Union, which represents sorters and clerks. There's a separate carriers division. Amanda says has been strained and injured clerks in her often short-staffed station frequently reach the breaking period of exhaustion, sort of like in an Amazon facility itself. We have to lift king-size headboards. I didn't know that they did that by myself, she said. 50-pound bags of dog food are common. UPS used to have a rule that basically limited packages to less than 20 pounds. That was a UPS. I remember once working in a warehouse where we did all sorts of things, 100-pound things, 300-pound things, caskets, etc. Anyway, Amazon marked packages heavy, team lift, but she and other clerks often have to lift them alone. Excuse me. One out of 10 clerks in her station, Amanda says she can only think of one or two having had work-related injuries and multi-surgeries. My friend Mary out in Montana used to be a postal type, and she had injuries also. This strain is just as great for USPS employees who drive the trucks, walk mail carts up and down the streets in 2013. Amazon and the Postal Service negotiated a service agreement. Many of the details have remained secret. It's sort of like redacted files that you get under the Freedom of Information Act. A redacted version is available online. It's unclear what the management promised UPS, but most visible consequences is that the carriers have begun delivering Amazon packages on Sundays and federal holidays. No doubt about that. The Vice President of the Association of Letter Carriers, RINFOR, the Union for Delivery People, expressed more comfort than Deinstein about Amazon as a customer. He emphasized that the relationship between the two entities mean more business for the post office. No doubt, more packages there are, the more revenue is, but it makes work more physical. Well, he should get out there and do it. Said carriers often have between 40 and 70 of these packages, a lot of packages there. A male carrier in Philadelphia who asked his full name not be used. Having more packages on a route makes you already difficult work worse, slowing down each stage of the process. Packages, of course, fill up the truck, and meaning he has to make extra circuits and sometimes return to the station for a second load. He slows down even more if has to deliver a team lift package by himself. Management just doesn't get enough, don't give enough time to finish the route. No doubt about that. This is a situation more heavy on low-paid carriers called city carriers assistance. Another scheme there, two-tier or perhaps even three-tier, are still unionized, but their starting salaries are much lower. In other words, a two-tier idea. And these newer, less experienced workers are often forced to do Sunday deliveries or complete extra runs when Amazon packages overflow. They also handle normal duties too. The post office has a big problem retaining people, period. And their trucks are long life vehicles in the Postal Service. It's called death traps. They've started to get the newer trucks out there. In addition to being prone to breakdown, the trucks aren't even designed to fit in large packages. That is definitely true. The Post has recently made investments upgrading their fleet with new Ram Postmaster vans that are better equipped for packages, but the rollout has been slow. In other words, in some places they get them, some places they don't. Phil Rubio, a professor of history at North Carolina A&M State University, a historic African university, and a former letter carrier, says that although the postal unions and management have always clashed over services and labor issues, they are both historically public advocates for the mission of the post office. But Rabio, said since 2006, management has doubled down on its cost cutting. No doubt about it. And let me finish this up. The leaders don't have the easiest jobs. Both management unions have at various times considered raising postal rates. But again, that's the commission, but large mailers usually lobby against it. Last year, regulators raised the price of a stamp by 1 cent, and I have no idea what a stamp costs, which helped boost the near-term revenue. The current Republican-led Congress is unlikely to pass any bill that does not push the post office towards privatization. The progressive postal reforms could easily could ease the post office remaining obligations. And back to Elizabeth Warren, talking about a postal banking would generate revenue when combined when combating the influence of payday lenders. And with Amazon, it hires independent contract delivery packaging in more than 30 cities already. Recently announced that it would launch a full-scale delivery service called Shipping with Amazon that would compete with the with UPS and FedEx. It also repealed plans for a whole food service delivery after blaming postal carriers for the failure of an earlier fresh delivery program. An absolute lie. For their part, the workers who deliver the package aren't optimistic because of the cost cuts of management. It's Amazon's world. The USPS just delivers in it. Now, this is from Bloomberg. David Leon is the person here. I'm trying to get a date on this. It's hard to get dates. In cities like Frisco and New York, letter carriers have been showing up on people's doorstep as early as 3 a.m. I remember once working in the office, and at 5 a.m. someone showed up on usual cargo, milk and eggs and other perishables. The Postal Service has been delivering groceries in select areas since October of 2014. That is from Megan Brennan, who was sworn in as the 74th Postmaster General in March, before becoming the first woman to hold the institution's job in 240 years. We are only people doorsteps on the people's doorsteps 6 and 7 days a week. A former letter carrier from Pottsville, PA. Brennan is trying to transform the post office into delivery service for e-commerce. That means hauling fewer packages, fewer letters and more packages. Predecessor was a character named Donahue, who was an absolute asshole. Announced in November that the Postal Service would be delivering that was November 2013, 7 days a week. Postal Service does not disclose how much its relationship with about its relationship with Amazon. Confidentiality agreements should not be there. An analyst at Bernstein Research, who tracks the shipping industry, estimates the 40% of Amazon's volume last year are 150 million items, more than either UPS or FedEx. He figures Amazon pays the UPS $2 per package. Hell of a lot cheaper than we could have any the Postal Service deliver anything on priority mail. Brennan needs all the new business she can get in 2014. First class mail volume fell 3% with compared with the previous year to 64 billion packages. Last year, $2 million to furnish its carriers with these internet connected hand scanners and made by Honeywell. No doubt paid too much money. She says the agency is hoping to replace its fleet of, and this is mind-boggling here, 189,750 delivery trucks. Most are 25 years old. They don't have air conditioning, as this postal carrier told me. And top priority is getting Congress to pass legislation which would require postal retirees to use Medicare as their primary insurance. This would eliminate the need to pay the $5 billion a year. But also they would get not the type of coverage that they now get. Package growth gives Brennan some more pleasure to discuss with lawmakers and lobbyists. Been a decline of first class mail. Elizabeth Warren plays in this again, and this character of the House Oversight Committee out of Utah, Jason Chaffetz, he's gone, or will be gone very soon. It's kind of a little rehash here, and I'm sort of angry they didn't give me a date on when this. Oh, this was August of 2015. Well, over 2 years ago. But anyway, you get the whole idea here. 2017. This is Amazon. Literally, will have a key to your house, your front door there with the cameras. Now, no more getting packages stolen, no more worries, etc. In 37 cities, Amazon will offer a secure lock service called Amazon Key, and I guess the Postal people will get it too. Will give Amazon Logistics delivery personnel permission to unlock a customer's door for 5 minutes using a Cloud Cam. That's a new Amazon service. We'll not spend a lot of time with that. But continually here, this is Trump and his charges to charge more money to Amazon. And this was on December 29th. Pretty new article. Trump has been battling with Amazon's Washington Post. Why is the U.S. Postal Service, which is losing billions of dollars a year, while charging Amazon and others to deliver their packages, making Amazon richer and the post office dumber and poorer? Should be charging much more. That's what DJ Trump twittered out, and they should be. And he could effectively do that. The president does not determine postal rates. That is by the Postal Rate Commission. That's an independent government agency selected by the president from both political parties. They raise prices on packages. Prices on packages by 2% in November. So there was an increase there. A tweet over the past year, he has said the Amazon Washington Post fabricated a story. Amazon, founded by Jeff Bezos, who remains the chief executive of the retail company, is the richest person in the world. Trump has repeatedly railed against his criticism of a newspaper of the. In fact, we endorsed the Washington Post. Has shown interest in the past of shifting its own delivery service, including testing drones. I don't know what happened to the drones. They were thinking about that. The company in 2015, spent $11.5 million on shipping, a 46% of its operating, almost 50% of its operating expense there. So, in other words, they are rolling right along. Millions of ship Matrix Inc., which analyzes shipping data. We'll have to check them out. Disputes the idea that the Postal Service charges less than UPS and FedEx and the other big players. Many customers get lower rates. There's no doubt about that. The Postal Service delivers about 62%. Now, this is a new number. Remember, we had 40% of Amazon's packages for about 3.5 to 4 million a day during the current peak. This is the holiday season. Have agreed in which letter carriers take packages on the last leg. That's the last mile. Amazon's number 2 is UPS at 21%. We finally get some numbers here. And FedEx is number 3. Period. So we sort of get an idea of what's going on here. Representatives from Amazon, the White House, Postal Service, FedEx declined to comment. And according to an annual report, the post office lost less this year, $2.74 million this year, and has a deficit is ballooned to $61.86 billion. Revenue for first class mail, marketing mail, periodicals is flat or declining. Revenue from packages is up 44% since 2014 to to 19.5 billion in the fiscal year ending the 30th of September 2017. But it also lost about $2 billion in revenue when a temporary surcharge expired in April of 2016, according to the Government Accounting Office report in February. That would have been of last year. The service is facing a growing personnel expense, particularly the $73.4 billion in unfunded pension and benefit liability. The Postal Service is not in any plans to cut costs. By law, the Postal Service has to set prices for package delivery to cover the costs attributed to the service, but the Post Office allocates only 5.5% of its total cost to its business of shipping packages, although the line of business is 28%. Now, this article did bring up a lot of things that we need to look at, and we won't get into the figures about facts and figures here. The Postal Service delivers for America. Total number of workers and career workers in 2016 was 538,908. And the total mail volume was 154.3 billion pieces of mail. That first class mail alone, 61.2 billion. Some of the breakdown here: annual operating revenue in 2016, 71.4 billion, and it was 68.8 billion in 2015. And it's been around that. In 2007, the annual operating revenue was 74.7 billion. And they had many more workers also in 2007. That had been 10, 11 years ago. They had 684,000 workers at that particular time. And the volume was 212,000 billion, that is 212 billion pieces of mail out there. And they break it down. Some of the shipping volume in 2016, 5.2 billion. And 3.3 billion, that would have been in 2008, 10 years ago. And some of the various things here: stamped postage pre-sorted cards, 3 billion in 2016, 5.8 billion in 2007. Total retail customers, 877.4 billion retail customer visits, and it was 1.16 billion in 2008. So some of the things going in vehicles. In 2016, 227,000 vehicles the Postal Service ran, and they had 219,522 vehicles in. That would have been 2007. So you can see the increase here from 219,000 to 227,000. These are vehicles that the post office had. Routes, they had 229,000 delivery routes. They had 246,000. So they've cut back on some of that. And Save the Post Office discontinuancies and suspensions, a year in review. This is on the 26th of February. This is by the professor there. The Postal Service and Postal Regulation Commission are currently working on the annual compliance renewal. It's determined during the previous year the Postal Service has met all of its rate settings and service goals of the 2006 Accountability Act. And we'll skip down. The final determination to discontinue has been issued on 304 post offices at various points during 2013-2015, but the Postal Service was reluctant to finalize those discontinued situations there. Retail discontinuance activity often elicits questions and concerns from stakeholders. In other words, the Postal Service held back in discontinuancies announcements because it did not want to raise public concerns or complicates efforts to get postal reform done in the Congress. After several months, temporary post offices opened. This is somewhere in Ohio, and he has various other things. We'll append this article to our broadcast. And let's do the sports now as we finalize the Post Office 2013. We'll start with NBA basketball. The Suns were at the Hornets 122-115. The Wizards were at the Heat 129-105. For the Wizards, the Grizzlies and Mavericks in Dallas 114 for the Mavericks. They handily won that game by 24 points, and 80 for the Grizzlies. The Spurs and Thunder in OKC. Thunder 104 to a 94 10-point game there. And finally, the Magic and Clippers in Los Angeles. Clippers 113-105. On to Major League Baseball. This is spring training, incidentally. The Pirates and Orioles. The Orioles 13-5. The Mets and Yankees. The Yankees won at 10-3. The Nationals and Astros tied up at 2-2. The Rays and Phillies. Rays 5-3. Atlanta and the Pirates 15-1. Atlanta. The Marlins and Cardinals. 7-3. Marlins. The Tigers and Blue Jays. Blue Jays 6-3 in that contest. The Rockies and Brewers. Brewers 9-2. The Athletics and Rangers 8-2 there. Rangers. The White Sox and Cubs 4-4 tie there. The Angels and Giants, a game we tuned into. They had two of these games, incidentally. 11-7, two squads. The Giants and Angels. Again, the Giants won that game 9-8. Cleveland and the Padres tied 8-8. The Royals and Diamondbacks 10-3. The Mariners and Reds. Mariners 5-2. Cubbies and Dodgers. The Dodgers pulled that one out. There were two squads going on. 6-5. And finally, the game between the Red Sox and Twins was canceled. On to college ball. Later today, we'll have the March Madness selections. North Carolina and number 1 Virginia. Virginia 71-63. In overtime, Providence and number 2 Villanova. Villanova's 76-66. Memphis and number 8 Cincinnati. A 10-point game. That's Cincy 70-60 in that game. West Virginia and number 9 Kansas was Kansas by 81-70. Number 22 Houston and Wichita State. Houston outdid Wichita State. Wichita State was ranked number 11. The Strikers 77-74 Houston at Wichita State. And USC and Arizona. Arizona 75-61. St. Joseph, and Rhode Island. Rhode Island 90. High scoring game there to 87. And Arkansas and Tennessee. Tennessee 84-66. And on to the National Hockey League. Blackhawks, Bruins 7-4. The Golden Knights of Vegas and the Sabres. Golden Knights 2-1 in that contest. the Canadiens and the Lightning 3-2 there, and the Jets and the Flyers 2-1. The Coyotes and Avalanche, Arizona Coyotes and the Colorado Avalanche, 5-2 was the score. Avalanche. The Blues and the Kings, Blues of St. Louis 7-2 over the Kings, and the Capitals and Sharks. Capitals shut out the Sharks. The Penguins and Maple Leafs, 5-2 over our Penguins of Toronto. The Maple Leafs, that is. The Rangers and Panthers 4-3. And let's see, the Devils and the Predators, Devils 3-2 in that contest. And finally, the Wild and Oilers of Edmonton. Oilers 4-1, and it was played in Edmonton. Anyway, that is sports. The episode has been the Post Office 2008 from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. These will be on many of our outlets today on the 11th of March. And incidentally, set your clocks forward by 1 hour for daylight saving time. Of course, most people with their smartphones, their computers, etc., it's automatically set. That's what happened with us. Our satellite watch didn't work as well, though. But anyway, we did get it set. Have a good weekend. And we'll be back on a Monday morning. We put the plug in here. The Monday morning quarterback will be here. We'll be quarterbacking the talk shows and other events, and DJ Trump's rally in an airplane hangar in Pennsylvania. And that contest in, I believe it's Pennsylvania 18 there. And also we have an open source report, which is coming up this weekend.